Hello, everyone. Welcome back to The Victim's Voice. I'm your host, Lorelei. The case that I'm covering today is out of Clark County in Springfield, Ohio, and it was originally supposed to be solely about Angela Lee Hanaway. Her case has been ruled a cold case. However, the family hasn't given up finding out what happened to her. I couldn't find a whole lot of information on just Angela, but what I did find led me down a rabbit hole of multiple other victims and someone who could very well have been a serial killer in the area. With that being said, let's go ahead and jump in. On June 10th, 2008, a partially clothed body of a woman was located in the Mad River near the 2300 block of Dayton Road. Decomposition was in full effect, but they found no other evidence at the scene. The woman was so decomposed that they had to use dental and medical records to identify her. The victim turned out to be 35-year-old Angela Lee Hanaway. She had last been seen in late January of 2008. So for 5 months, she was missing and no one had any idea what had happened to her. The medical examiners said that Angela had died a very violent death and that she had been in the water for some time. There was also another gruesome discovery and maybe even a signature from her killer. Angela's eyes had been removed. The manner of death in Angela's case was ruled a homicide, but the cause of death could not be determined because of the effects that the water and the decomposition had on her body. So, who was Angela Hanaway? Angela Lee Hanaway was a Halloween baby born on October 31st, 1972. Her parents, Diana Hissey and Harry Hanaway, didn't stay together, and Diana remarried a man named John Hissey. Angela was one of three girls, with her two sisters being Carrie and Tina. All three girls were very close growing up and remained close into adulthood as well. Angela was described as being funny, bubbly, and loud. As a child, she enjoyed gymnastics, and as she got older, she was really into cosmetology. She was a beautiful girl with her entire life ahead of her. One of her former teachers described her as, quote unquote, the cutest little blonde in the halls. By age 35, Angela had three daughters, Caitlin, Jessica, and Kylie. Angela didn't have a strong work history outside of the home, but she made up for it in the home. Angela was a kick ass mom and homemaker. She was the kind of person who had a knack for managing a home and kids and made it look easy. People often said she was OCD because she was such a clean freak. And when she cooked meals, she made everything from scratch. She was a loving and caring mom who always made sure her children were taken care of and put first. Unfortunately, Angela struggled with her own personal battles from time to time, and one of those battles was addiction. She wanted to be clean, but when your addiction has a strong hold on you, it's hard to get clean and stay clean. Even though she never stopped being a good mother, her addictions put her in the presence of some very shady, seedy characters. Because of her addiction, Angela's family kept their distance. They loved her and knew that her battles didn't define who she was, but they do at times put you in a different mindset. All they wanted was for Angela to get clean for good and get back to her old self. The last time the family remembers Angela staying with them was 18 months before she went missing. Angela was last seen by anyone in late January of 2008, which matches up with the timeline because she had been in the river for months. Even though Angela was found at that spot in the river, they don't believe that's where she died. The Mad River had flooded that month, and her body could have floated for up to 3 miles. There's also another reason that they believe there's a secondary crime scene. Years later, in 2021, some of Angela's personal belongings were found near Buck Creek and Old Tree Park. The items included her purse and her ID. They believe this could be the spot where Angela was attacked and even ultimately killed. He's had a few persons of interest that they had talked to about Angela's murder. One of these people were one of her ex boyfriends, Thomas J. Roberts. They had a tumultuous relationship years earlier. Thomas was even charged and convicted of assaulting and strangling Angela in July of 2004. But authorities stated that Thomas had a strong alibi and therefore was ruled out of being the person who killed Angela. I don't understand how this could be because they aren't even sure exactly when she was killed. They only have a day she was last seen and an estimated time of death, unless Thomas had not been in the area at all during the time frame of her murder, which is very possible. But at any rate, law enforcement know enough to rule him out. Other than Thomas, there were no other persons of interest or suspects named by authorities. And in 2008, the case went cold. That is, until 10 years later in 2018. This is when a person of interest was named, a man who was already a convicted double murderer and also charged with felonious assault and aggravated robbery. By 2018, he was serving a life sentence in prison. This man was a person of interest in at least 3 other cases, including Angela's, in the Springfield area since he moved there in 2008, the year that Angela had gone missing. This person was Prentiss Hare. We're going to jump down a rabbit hole now and talk about who Prentiss is and what he is in prison for now. We will also discuss other murders besides Angela's that authorities believe Prentiss Hare could be involved in. The information I'm going to go over now is from an appeal that Prentiss Hare has filed after being convicted of murder. Donald Walton was a friend of Prentiss Hare's that lived in a duplex at 12 South Light Street in Springfield, Ohio. On the morning of December 14th, 2015, Walton Hare and another friend named Sylvester Howard were hanging out at Walton's home. Walton left for a few minutes to run to the store, and when he returned, there were 2 other people at his house: Ashley Cromlish, an admitted drug addict, and Deshaun Lumford, a known drug dealer. Cromlish had come to the house to buy some drugs from Lumford, but decided to stay a while and do her drugs there. Prentiss Hare didn't want to be left out of the party, so he too received some drugs, namely crack cocaine, from Lumford. However, since Hare had no money at the time, Lumford gave it to him on quote unquote credit. Hare was a greedy little crackhead, though, and when he had finished all of his drugs he had gotten on credit, he asked Lumford for some more, but this time he was told that his line of credit was maxed out and that he would have to pay. So Hare went out and sold his taxpayer funded food stamps, as you do when you're looking for your next hit of crack. Hare was able to make a whopping $70, which he, of course, gave to Lumford for some more drugs. At this point, everyone in the house was smoking crack, except for Ashley Cromlish. She had used some heroin that she had gotten from Lumford's bag of goodies. Once his $70 worth of crack was gone, Hare started harassing Lumford again, trying to get him to reinstate his line of credit, if you will, but Lumford said absolutely not. He wanted his money. Angry that he couldn't get any more crack and also had no way of getting more money, Hare started arguing with Lumford about some quote unquote bad crack he had sold him before. I thought all crack was bad, and he was okay with Lumford's drug selection until it came time to actually pay for them. Some time went by, and everyone thought Hare and Lumford were done arguing about the bad crack. According to Howard and Walton, they were sitting in the living room while Cromlish went into the bathroom to use the heroin she had gotten earlier from Lumford. Lumford walked into the living room from the kitchen, when suddenly Hare came up behind him, grabbed him by the throat, and lifted him up off the floor. Both men fell on a mattress that was laying in the middle of the living room. Hare was on top of Lumford and continued strangling him with both hands, while Lumford barely resisted. At first, Howard tried to pull Hare off of Lumford, but Walton stopped him. That's when he said, "Fuck this," and took off out the door. Howard did not want to be involved in whatever was going down in the duplex, at least not for the moment. However, as Howard went out the door, he heard Hare tell him or Walton to get the money from Lumford, but Howard thought, fuck that, and kept on stepping. Cromlish said that while she was in the bathroom, she heard a thump. When she opened the door, she saw Hare and Walton carrying Lumford's body through the kitchen and out the back door. Cromlish asked if Lumford would be okay, And one of the men, she's not sure which one, said that he would, but that if she said anything to anybody, then they would hurt her. Walton testified that later on, he and Hare stopped at a bar for a beer. I mean, who wouldn't want a refreshing ice cold beer after all the work of moving a dead body? Hare paid for the beers with cash. The same guy who didn't have money for his drugs earlier that day, which is why the fight even started. Hare and Walton then went to a church, of all places, to have dinner. While they were there, someone said that a body had been found behind Walton's house. Howard, the one who ran like a bat out of hell out of the house, eventually came back around at some point and sold Hare some crack, which seems to be really stupid since he knows that's what led to Lumford's death. While Howard was there, Hare told him that if he didn't keep his mouth shut, the same thing that happened to Lumford would happen to him. Walton's duplex is just a few feet away from a convenience mart called the Main Stop, where at 3 p.m. on that Friday, an employee found Lumford's body behind the store. He noticed that Lumford's pants and shoes had been removed. The shoes were beside his body and the pants were near his head. There were also drag marks leading away from the body towards Walton's duplex. The employee tried to get a response from Lumford, but when he couldn't, he went inside and called 911. When he came back out after making the call, the pants were gone. He figured Lumford had been robbed. Springfield police officers Jerry Bowen and Detective James McCutcheon responded to the scene. Their first thought was that maybe it was an overdose. But then, after accessing the scene further, they noticed an abrasion on Lumford's neck. Based on the abrasion, the missing pants, and no other indications that there had been an overdose, they decided they needed to wait for the autopsy to be done. Which I thought they normally do anyway, but maybe it's different in different places. The officers took photos of Lumford's body and the drag marks leading to the duplex next door. They checked inside of the duplex for occupants, but found no one inside. 3 days later, on Monday, Howard himself went to the police station voluntarily and told them what he knew about Lumford's death. He also identified Hare from a photo lineup. Based on the information that detectives were told by Howard, they went and spoke to both Cromlish and Walton. Walton also gave consent for authorities to search the duplex. Keisha Wheeler, a neighbor of Walton's, watched from the street as detectives put Walton into the back of a cop car. She went inside the duplex and found Prentiss Hare sitting on the couch alone. Keisha had heard that a body had been found outside, and so she asked Hare if he knew anything about it. Hare then told Keisha that he had in fact killed Lumford by asphyxiation. He told Keisha that he had killed Lumford for fleecing him or selling him bad cocaine. Hare told Keisha that he and another person had taken Lumford's body out and dumped him behind the convenience mart. After about 10 minutes of talking to Hare, detectives came in to search the duplex and to take Hare into custody. During the search of the duplex, police found a pair of blue jeans under the kitchen sink. Walton told authorities that the blue jeans could possibly be Lumford's. I mean, who keeps their blue jeans under a kitchen sink? So, who took the jeans from Lumford's body and why take them and put them inside the duplex? They were lying near the body when the employee found the body, but when he came back 10 minutes later, they were gone. That part doesn't make much sense. Authorities had a DNA analysis done on the jeans, and they did come back as having Lumford's DNA on them. Police also recovered a cell phone at the scene that belonged to Hare. They recovered a text message conversation on it from December 4th, 2015 that said, quote, LOL, oops, I did it again, and many more, end quote. Either he really liked Britney Spears or this is very telling of his past behaviors. The name he gave the person he was texting on his phone was, quote unquote, the one. Hare then says to this person, who appears to be someone he has seen romantically, quote, baby, I really love you. Sorry I couldn't find the words. Just keep reading the newspapers, end quote. Even with these messages coming out, Hare still denied any involvement in Lumford's death. Deputy Montgomery County Coroner Dr. Robert Schote autopsied Lumford's body on December 5th of 2015. He found that Lumford's lungs were heavy from an accumulation of extra blood and frothy-like watery fluid. This is common in overdoses, but there could be other causes as well. His initial findings were pulmonary congestion and edema, suspected drug overdose based on history and heavy lungs. There were also small abrasions on his neck and forehead. Detective McCushion had spoken with Howard, Walton, and Cromlish, however, and what they told him definitely didn't equal an overdose. So he called Dr. Choate and told him that the witnesses he had spoken to said that Lumford had been strangled. So Dr. Choate re examined Lumford's body. Other than the abrasion on the neck, Dr. Choate found no other unusual neck injuries. However, he did find small hemorrhages called petechiae of the blood vessels in Lumford's eyes. These ruptures are caused by increased blood pressure in the eyes, which occur when the veins in the neck, but not the arteries, are compressed such that blood cannot flow back to the heart. Because of these findings, Dr. Choate revised his initial findings to strangulation and ruled out an overdose, pending the toxicology results. When the toxicology results did come back, Lumford was found to have high concentrations of drugs in his system. Lots of dangerous drugs, namely marijuana, cocaine, fentanyl, and heroin. The amounts that were in his system were not necessarily fatal, but were sufficient to cause intoxication. However, based on witness reports, the neck abrasion, and the petechiae, Dr. Choate reported the cause of death as strangulation. Hare pleaded not guilty and took the case to trial. Prosecutors and defense lawyers argued during the 6 days of testimony whether a chokehold or drugs killed 35-year-old Deshaun Lumford. During Prentiss Hare's trial, the defense called experts to counter Dr. Choate's cause of death. The first was Dr. Francisco Diaz, who was a forensic pathologist who worked for Wayne County Coroner in Michigan. Dr. Diaz stated that strangulation results in obvious injuries to the neck area, which Lumford did not have. The other expert, Dr. Glenn Burns, a medical toxicologist, testified that Lumford had lethal levels of opiates in his system and that the concentration of fentanyl was 5 times the potentially lethal dose. He also said that petechiae could be caused by other sources other than strangulation. The jury didn't agree with the defense, and in November 2016, they found Hare guilty of felony murder and aggravated robbery. In December of 2016, he was sentenced to a term of 26 years to life in prison. This is just one of the murders that Hare is said to have committed, and the one that he got convicted of first. But 5 months before he killed Deshaun Lumford, there was Michael Frazier and Tiffany Chambers. Prentiss Hare resided in the Jacksonville, Florida area for a time in early to mid 2015. This is where he came across Michael Frazier, who was last seen near the Centerfold Lounge on July 10th of 2015 in Jacksonville, Florida. Police believe 1,000% that Hare murdered Frazier, but still to this day, he has not been charged with the murder due to a lack of evidence. Law enforcement also believe that there was a witness to Frazier's murder, a woman named Tiffany Chambers. Hare believed that Tiffany was telling people that she had witnessed Hare murder Frazier, so it's believed that Hare brought Tiffany back to Ohio, to Clark County, where he, along with 2 other people, murdered her. Tiffany was not just murdered, though. Her eyes were also removed, just like Angela Hannaway. Not being connected right away to the murders of Chambers and Frazier, Hare went on to kill Lumford in December of 2015, for which he was arrested, charged, and convicted. In May of 2016, 5 months after Lumford's murder and Prentiss Hare's subsequent arrest, unidentified human remains of a female were located in a secluded area in the 2500 block of Elam Road in Spring Valley, which is located in Greene County in Ohio. For 8 months, her identity was a mystery. That is, until DNA evidence positively identified her as Tiffany Chambers. Authorities believe that Chambers came to Ohio in July of 2015 with Prentiss Hare. They believe she was murdered in Springfield and then her body was taken to Greene County and dumped. Prentiss Hare was charged with aggravated murder, gross abuse of a corpse, and tampering with evidence in the murder investigation of Tiffany Chambers. During his sentencing for Tiffany's murder, Hare was seen smiling in the courtroom. Observers who saw him said that he looked like a crazy person, a very dangerous crazy person, who had told people in the past that he had killed many people, and that his preferred way to do it was strangulation. Hannah Whitman, a friend of Prentiss Hare's, had helped him dispose of Tiffany Chambers' body. She received no jail time but was given 5 years of probation, 6 months of house arrest, and 500 hours of community service. So there are two people that Prentiss Hare definitely killed and is serving time in prison for, and another, Michael Frazier, that law enforcement believe wholeheartedly that he killed, but they haven't been able to prove. But there are four other people that were murdered in the Springfield, Ohio area between 2006 and 2008, a time that Hare was in the area, and law enforcement believes that there's a good chance that he was involved in these murders. According to Dan Driscoll, the Clark County Assistant Prosecutor, law enforcement began looking into the murders of Angela Lee Hanaway, who we already talked about, Buffy Jo Freeman, Angela Kilgore, and Shakira Walker. The women were killed within 2 years of each other and in the same area of Clark County, Ohio. Driscoll also said that he believed there was evidence that all four of these women were linked to prostitution and drug use. We've already discussed Angela Hanaway and the very few details of her murder that have been made public. So let's talk about the other three women. One of the women actually knew Hare personally. This was Buffy Jo Freeman. It was rumored that she and Hare were friends and did drugs together. Barbara Freeman, Buffy's aunt, said she lived in North Carolina at the time of Buffy's death, but did come up to Springfield for Christmas. She was preparing dinner for the family when her nephew, along with Prentiss Hare and some of their other friends, came into the home. It makes her feel sick to know that the man who might have murdered her niece was in the same house as she was for the holidays. Buffy Jo was last seen alive at the intersection of Schaefer Street and Main Street at around 11:30 p.m., July 11th, 2007. She was found 4 hours later dead at Snyder Park near the tennis courts. She died of blunt force trauma to the head and body. She was 29 years old at the time of her death. Amanda Roth, the sister of Buffy Jo Freeman, said she knew her sister's choices were dangerous and worried constantly for her safety. Roth stated, quote, "I was always afraid something like that would happen to her because she was always getting in cars. I always thought that something was going to happen, and it did." End quote. Angela Kilgore was either 37 or 38 years old when she was killed. The Ohio State Attorney General's office estimates she was killed between October 22nd, 2007 and April 24th of 2008. It's just sad that there is a 6-month time period of when she was murdered, which means she probably wasn't reported missing, at least right away. I wonder if they could even pinpoint the last day she was ever seen. Was there no one looking for her or even noticing that she wasn't around? Did anyone even care, or had they all just given up on her? They did say that Angela was last seen at the Fairfax Motel at 2418 East Main Street in Springfield, Ohio, but they don't say when that was. And her body was found on April 24th, 2008, in a cistern to the rear of 506 Grant Street. The third victim is Shakira Walker, who was found on July 13th, 2006, lying in Davie Moore Park, north of the baseball fields. She was found by law enforcement. The difference was, though, that Shakira was still alive. The report says, quote, "The victim had been severely beaten about the head. There was also evidence she had been choked." End quote. Remember, Prentiss Hare liked to choke his victims. She was taken to the hospital in critical condition with damage to her brain. Shakira fought to survive, but she never regained consciousness. She died from her injuries on May 18th, 2007. And sadly, that's all we really know about Buffy Freeman, Angela Kilgore, and Shakira Walker. It seems that all of these women were leading a vulnerable and dangerous lifestyle, but that doesn't mean that they deserved what happened to them. They were still someone's sister, daughter, granddaughter, niece, and friend. Their lives weren't any less valuable because of the circumstances they had found themselves in. At this time, there still hasn't been any new developments connecting Hare to any of these four murders or to Michael Frazier's murder. He has only been convicted of the murders of Rashawn Lumford and Tiffany Chambers. If anyone has any information regarding the murders of Michael Frazier, Buffy Joe Freeman, Angela Hannaway, Angela Kilgore, or Shakira Walker, please contact the 24-hour tip line at 937 259 2237 or send an email to cmgohio.com. I will list other contact info for law enforcement agencies involved in the case on social media. For information and photos from this case, check out the victim's voice on social media and come back in 2 weeks for a new case. Until then, stay safe and peace out.